Good morning. Excuse me. Um, Agenda item 1 is the call to order. It's 9:30 a.m. on January 25th, 2024. I call this meeting of the Citizens Clean Elections Commission to order. With that, we'll take attendance. Commissioners, please identify yourselves for the record.
Scalen Payton.
Amy Chan.
And Mark Kimball. We do have a quorum. 3 of the 5 of us are here. Item 2, discussion possible action on minutes for the December 14th, 2023 meeting. Commissioners, you have the minutes for our December meeting in the packet. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Chan?
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Payton. I will call the roll. Commissioner Chan?
Aye.
Commissioner Payton?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The minutes are approved 3-0. Item 3, discussion possible action on the executive director's report. Tom?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners. We wanted to highlight that we have 2 elections coming up in March, and we'll highlight these again throughout both today and next month. There are local elections, including in Tempe and Litchfield Park on March 12th, and then the presidential preference election will be held on March 19th, and the voter registration deadline for that is February 20th. This is, if you get asked, this is the party presidential preference election, really. It's so PPE should really be party. That's my solution to the communication problem. But as you all know, one of the big things that comes up is the fact that the PPE, you have to be a member of the Democratic, Republican, or other party that has is on the ballot for that. You can't vote as an independent as you can in the state primary. Looks like Commissioner Titla is here.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Let the record show that Commissioner Titla has joined us too. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to highlight, that we've started up a full range of different outreach activities that Avery has been working on, and that Gina attended the Joint Election Official Liaison Conference, which was, I think, a worthy effort, worthy travel. She got a chance to talk to our elected representatives in Congress about clean elections, and I'm sure if you have more questions about that experience, and I think she'd be happy to talk to you about it. We're working with the Secretary's office and the Governor's office on implementing the website changes, or the website plans that were recommended in the Governor's bipartisan election task force report. We have had 13 candidate workshops for clean candidates. And so far, we've had 36 candidates attend. The Secretary of State's office beacon system now has a filing place for folks who need to make filings under the Voters' Right to Know Act. I think that's the main things there that I wanted to mention. I do think, this is sort of an FYI, but I want to mention, if you haven't read it, you can read all of the correspondence among the Treasurer, the Governor, and the Attorney General's office around the Attorney General opinion request that's pending about the appointment process. As I mentioned there, the Attorney General's office has told the press that they are anticipating having an opinion out on February 1st. So that, there are a number of analytical questions in that material, but the principal point in front of the AG, in my view, and for what it's worth, is that is that we have alternating. The statute sets up a system of alternating appointments between party and between office. The way that I look at this is a big picture question: does the pick, if there's a changeover like there's been, that's both in office and in party, does the picking, if you will, start with the office or the party, in which would resolve who sort of picks first? There's a number of other questions in there, but I think that's the big picture question. we have a lot obviously to get through with our voter education plan today. You can also see the legislative bills that we're tracking. I think that so far, there have been some bills introduced that are we've kind of kept our eye on, but nothing that we've seen that we need to weigh in on or ask you to weigh in on. So I think that's it from me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any discussion or questions from members of the commission? Hearing none, we will move on to item 4. Discussion possible action on Clean Elections 2024 voter education plan. Each year, the commission has adopted a voter education plan designed to promote participation and increase confidence of voters by providing information on elections and candidates. Our democracy asks a lot of voters, and as Clean Elections, it is our role to help connect voters to the tools and information they need to vote informed. We defend democracy by doing democracy, not as an abstract principle or aspiration, but in practical steps to improve access and availability of trusted information. To say voters will be busy this year is beyond understatement. Beginning with the presidential preference election in March, voters will have little or no break. There are state, primary, and general elections where all 90 seats of the legislature will be up for grabs. 3 seats on the Corporation Commission will be up as well. On the federal level, we will see not only the presidential election, but an election for the U.S. Senate. This is the 5th consecutive U.S. Senate election since 2016, when Senator McCain was last elected, which has to be some sort of a record. Gina Roberts, our voter education director, will be presenting an overview of what we accomplished in 2023 and an ambitious agenda to connect voters with information about candidates and the election process. Gina.
Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
We've got a PowerPoint here to pull up that we'll be sharing, and I believe the folks
Voters with information about candidates and the election process. Gina.
Jump right in. Next slide, please. Good morning, commissioners. So I wanted to start off
Morning.
by showcasing our current voter registration statistics.
PowerPoint here to pull up that we'll be
And
sharing.
so
Voters with
we
information
have
about
some
candidates
new parties
and
that
the
have
election
statewide recognition.
process.
So
Gina.
right now, the current lay of the land is
Morning,
we have the
commissioners.
Democratic Party,
wanted to
the
start off
Green
by
Party, the
showcasing our
Libertarian
current
Party,
voter
the No Labels Party, and the
PowerPoint
Republican
here
Party.
to pull
So
up.
those are the state recognized parties in Arizona. And you can see the breakdown of the number of registered voters they
right
have.
now, the
Now, for
current
any voter who is not registered as one of those recognized parties, they are grouped together and considered our other category, which is essentially our independent voters, which is a significant block, a significant chunk of voters. So across the state, we have about 4.1 million registered voters. So those are voters that we need to connect with to educate them on the elections. But we also need to connect with our citizens who are not yet registered. So we have quite a bit of folks to reach across the state. So how are we going to be looking at the next year? We can go ahead and do the next slide, please. And Mr. Chairman, you prefaced some of this already. We have 3 statewide elections next year. And I think it's important to note that the rules change for each election. And so we have to educate voters on what those rules are so they know who can participate, when, and how.
Mr. Chairman, so next year. This year. I mean, we're in it. I just wanted to make sure that it was important for the record. I know that's what we're talking about, but I just had to say something because it is right now. Thank you. Sorry.
Commissioner Chan, thank you for that. Yes. I have that fight.
I mean, we're in it.
I just lost all meaning since COVID. So
That's what we're talking about.
this year we have 3 statewide elections, and that's also include we do have 2 local elections as well. We have March and May local elections. elections. So lots of opportunities for voters to get civically engaged. As I mentioned, the rules change for each election. As we've heard from Tom earlier, we have the March 19th presidential preference election. This is an important communication method for those over 1 million independent voters that we have, because they cannot participate staying as a independent voter. Only the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have opted into participating in the presidential preference election. So that means anybody else who is currently not a Republican or a Democrat, if they want to vote in it, they actually do have to change their affiliation on their voter registration form. There is quite often confusion about this because as we jump into the next election, the rules have changed again, and now independent voters can participate without having to adjust their voter registration records. So in our August 6th primary election, all voters are eligible to participate. Independents, I have here, they can vote by selecting either a Republican or Democratic ballot. That's pending, subject to what we see of what happens with the No Labels Party. There's some litigation going on with that right now. And also if the Green Party decides to open up their primary. So we do have an open primary division in Arizona that allows independent voters to select that party's ballot to vote. And historically, the Libertarian Party has held up those primaries. The other potential change here is, and I think Tom has shared this, that currently our leadership is looking at potentially changing the date of the primary election. So with that, we change all of the other deadlines, such as registering to vote. So we have a lot of work to do in educating voters about what the rules are, both with its dates, the deadlines, if the date changes of the primary, but also who and how they can participate. Then we get to our November 5th general election. We can still stand that. So we have our November 5th general election, which is going to be our presidential election. Here, all voters can vote, and everybody gets the same ballot. So we have the same ballot with all of the nominees from the previous primaries, and of course our presidential electors too. So here's where we are actually electing candidates to office. So with just those three alone, and of course our two local elections, the March and May, there's a lot of information for voters to consume, to understand, to know how to navigate as we progress into this year with these elections. So we have our work cut out. Just those alone, and of course our two local elections. With that, I wanted to share some background information. This chart that you see here is from AdImpact. AdImpact released their projections of political spending across the country for 23 and 24, 2023 and 2024. Across the country, we're looking at about, I believe it's $10 billion in political spending. Arizona alone is right there at $821 million. So what that means is that it's not just clean elections messaging that's coming to voters. Voters are going to be inundated with ads, TV ads, radio ads, print ads, those mailers in their houses. They are going to have nonstop election information coming to them. So considering this, knowing that there's other entities out there that have political messaging that are going to be coming to voters, we have to figure out a way. How are we able to get the official nonpartisan messaging of clean elections connected to voters using the resources that we have available to us? So that's just something for consideration, to know that obviously there's going to be much more messaging that is trying to reach voters. And this is also especially important because in this day and age of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, we have to not only get the message to voters, but make sure that voters know it's coming from a trusted source. So that's the other challenge that we have. We can jump to the next slide, please. This is also especially important because in this day and age. So how do we prepare for this? How do we decide what our 2024 voter education plan will be? We make these decisions rooted in research. So in 2023, we conducted focus groups. We put an online survey out. We talked directly to voters to have a better understanding of what their voting experience is like, what information they need, how they feel about, are they able to get the information they need, and know where to go. So we looked at the voting experience specifically, which is great. The research is indicating that voters, they feel pretty confident in knowing about the election process, such as where to go vote, how to get your ballot, things like that. They do know that they need a little bit more help when it comes to understanding the candidate positions, which is where Clean Elections comes in with our candidate statement pamphlet and our debates. And then we elections and debates. What is the sentiment regarding those? So when voters look at the election season and the debates, they do have a negative sentiment towards it. I think just oftentimes, maybe perhaps when you look at the messaging, it can be negative that's coming out there, attack ads. They feel that there's oftentimes hostility and polarization during the election season. And then they see that sometimes in debates as well, too, where maybe their feeling isn't based so much on voters are looking for substance in debates. So maybe not just the one-liners or attacks in debates, but they're looking for that substantive, informative information. And again, that's where we come in and how our debate process will be, which I'll talk about in a few slides. And then we get into voter education. Where are voters going to get their info that they need? And this again comes back to that trusted source. We know voters are going to Google. Google is not a source. Google is a search engine. So we are often asking voters, okay, well, where did Google lead you to? Those types of things. And so we know that voters are having a hard time in identifying sources that they can believe, that are credible, that are trusted. So when we talk about our voter education plan, we not only have to get the messaging out, but we have to make sure that we're doing branding, that people understand who Clean Elections is, that we are nonpartisan, that we are the state's official voter education agency, that everything that we do is intended to promote that participation in the political process, but not influence. So again, that's a challenge for us. It's an objective for us, and not just communicating with voters about the information they need, but also they understand the source of where it's coming from. We can go to the next slide, please. Promote that participation in the political process, but not. So how do we do that? What are we communicating? As I mentioned, yes, we need to focus on branding, but again, we're going to be getting into that general election education. How do you get your ballot? Where's my voting location? How do I register to vote? What are those key dates and deadlines? We're also going to be messaging on our voter education guide. The voter education guide is consistent, and I'll talk about this a little bit more too, but the voter guide is consistently ranked as one of the top trusted sources for voters. They know it. They come to expect it in their mailbox, which is fantastic. So we'll be putting messaging out there. Hey, check your mailbox. This is going to be delivered. This is what you can get. This is how you can use it. We'll also be messaging on our debates. Here's our debate schedule. This is how you can submit a question. Here's who the candidates are, all those good things. And then, of course, we have our youth outreach. So we do look at this demographic. Our 18 to 24-year-olds are historically one of the demographics with the lowest voting turnout. And we know that, not messaging isn't one size fits all. We have to have different tactics when it comes to reaching our youth voters and our future voters. And then, of course, independent voters. As I mentioned in some of those first slides, the rules change across each election, and that's particularly true for our independent voters. So we have a specific campaign dedicated to the education that independent voters need so that they can participate or understand how to get involved. And then we have general civic engagement and civic participation messaging as well, because we know that if somebody is inclined to be civically engaged, whether that's attending a council meeting or school board meeting, these are also going to be likely voters as well too. So it promotes that health of the democracy and encourages that civic engagement, which will also likely include voting. And then how do we do this? So as I mentioned, all of those political ads are going to be coming out. During our research, knowing there's a little bit of hostility out there with the overall sentiment with our partners, we decided, okay, we've got to capture people's attention. How do we do that with our resources in the limited space that we have, whether it's a TV ad or a radio? How do we capture their attention and then get them to come to Clean Elections? So in the past, we've had very straightforward messaging, looks very official government, very direct. We've, tried different approaches in the past. This year, we decided this approach, which I will let you take from when we watch this video clip. We feel that this is probably our best shot at capturing voters' attention and getting them to driving them to Clean Elections. So we should have that. If we go to the next slide, it should pull up that video. No. And just go ahead and hit the play button. Capturing voters' attention and getting them to driving them to Clean Elections. So we should have that. If we go to the next slide, it should pull up that video. So this is going to be our one of our TV commercials that we will be running. It's a 30-second spot. And getting them to driving them to Clean Elections. So we should have that.
If we go to the next slide, it should pull up videos. So this is going to be our one of our TV commercials that we will be running. It's a 30-second spot. Getting them to driving them to clean election. So we should have that
Audio
if we go to
here.
the next slide, it should pull up videos.
So you know what? I will actually just play it on my.
So this is going to be our one of our TV commercials that we will be running. It's a 30-second spot. Getting them to driving them to clean election. So we should have that
Audio
if we
here.
go to the next slide, it should pull up videos.
So you know what? I will actually just play it on my.
So this is going to be our
No. Okay. All right. That's okay. So, essentially what this video does, the strategy behind this is to showcase frustration in doing those common everyday activities. And so we have this person here who is in their vehicle, and early morning, they're getting ready to go to work, and they're having difficulty opening up a blister package. So those are the packagings that come in that they're difficult to either cut open with scissors, or you can't access it. And it just showcases her frustration. And so it's a comedic approach. It ends up being pretty funny. And, it talks about, sometimes life is complicated, but the voting process doesn't have to be, and we drive them to clean elections. So we can make sure that we share this with you all, so you can watch it on a different computer at a later time to get the full experience of it. But again, the thought was, let's capture their attention. We'll do that creatively, and then we'll resonate with them. We'll have something that's relatable, and then we'll connect them to clean elections. So that's one example of how we intend to do that. We can go to the next slide.
You're going to show that on TV?
Yes, that is correct. So we will be, right. So here is how we're going to reach the voters. This is our media plan. We will have our messaging on television. We'll be on radio. We'll be on Netflix ads, things like that. So over the top, out of home billboards. Billboards are very impactful, especially when we look at areas that maybe internet is not necessarily, broadband isn't widespread or accessible. So in our rural areas, out of home works well. Digital, so you'll be getting those ads that pop up when you're on the internet. Print ads, so we'll be in the local papers, and then of course social media too. So basically every tactic that we have available to us, we are going to utilize to connect with voters throughout the year. So we have created these assets to use in all of these different platforms to connect with voters. We can do the next slide. This is, if you just go through a couple clicks, this is these are a few more examples of what that creative looks like. So these would be billboards, these would be digital messaging. So this is what we have prepared to release for this year. So debates, watch, learn, decide. You saw just for one of those billboards, it was a very specific message: presidential preference election, March 19th, and print ads and election information at your fingertips. Go to azcleanelections.gov, and we talk about what's available there. Okay, so we are driving in all of this messaging. We're driving people to our website. Our website is our crown jewel. The website is continually advancing with the traffic that we receive from voters. So just to give you a quick snapshot, you can see the growth from 2020. So in 2020, which is a presidential election year, we had 2.9 million page views. We see that, of course, in our odd years, that drops because we're not in a statewide election cycle. 2022, in our midterms, we had 5.4 million events. That's pretty significant. In those past few election cycles, we have partners across the state, whether it's the counties or the Secretary of State's office, or we see the League of Women Voters. We even saw Cosmopolitan and Rolling Stone. We are seeing these groups reference the Clean Elections website, link to the Clean Elections website from their website, which is fantastic, because we know that we are providing a resource to voters that has the information that they need, but also that it's presented in a way that they can understand, that it's easily accessible and digestible. And that's really important.
Mr. Chairman, Gina,
Commissioner Chan.
can I ask what the distinction is? In 2022, we started calling them events instead of page views.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Chan, thank you. Google Analytics, which is how we track this information, they changed. So page views are essentially how many times the page is pulled up and somebody looks at it. What we are tracking now are the events, which also showcase engagement. So it's how many times somebody not only views your page, but is engaging with it. So maybe that's clicking, on the link to register to vote, things like that. So it showcases us how people are interacting with the page too. We have a world more of data available to us, such as what are the top pages that people are looking at, which is fantastic because we see a lot of folks that are coming to look at election security. They're looking at early voting, how early voting works, our detail pages for all of the elections. So the more we track this and we look at it every month, and that helps us better understand how people are engaging with the site, what information they're looking for, and how we could better present this information. The other thing that I'd like to call out too with our website that is very fantastic is considering everything that we just talked about with the paid media, how we're connecting voters and driving them back to our website. The top driver to get people to azcleanelections.gov is organic search. That means somebody is pulling up their web browser and they're going to Google, and in the Google search bar, they're typing in AZ Clean Elections. They're typing in clean elections, and that's how they're getting to our site. So whether that's recollection from seeing our ad, from seeing our messaging, or just their awareness of clean elections as the voter education agency, they're going and they're actively looking for us, which is phenomenal. That's what we want. So that is what we are driving people to. We know that our website is successful and we know that it's meeting the needs of voters. So we can go to the next slide, please. So we want to continue to make sure that our site is evolving, that is, it is continuing to meet the needs of voters as we look towards the future. So in 2023, we invested in research in the user experience. So what that means is we pulled together voters from across the state, and we had them sign on to a Zoom meeting, and we gave them tasks. We recorded this. So we would say, okay, go to azcleanelections.gov. Now that you're there, find your voting location, or tell me what the requirements are to register to vote. And we would track their movements, and we would see how many clicks did it take them to get there? Did they get confused? Where did they stumble? Where did they pause? We did this to see, is the information on our website easy to attain? Is it easy to get to? And so our goal is ultimately to improve that user experience. We want to make it so people can go to the website and they can find exactly what they're looking for quickly, because we know that time is precious. And we want to make sure that our information is not redundant, that we can consolidate it, we can simplify it. And we can also look at how we name things too. Nomenclature is very important, and how we position and present that information. So that was our goal. So that leads us to a redesign and restructuring of our website. We can go to the next slide, please. So before I give you a preview of what that redesign looks like, the other note that's important from 2023 on our website is the governor's office, Governor Hobbs. She had created a bipartisan election task force to get together and look at issues presenting voters and elections. One of the takeaways from the report that came through, and I believe Tom has updated the commission about this in previous meetings, is the Clean Elections website was identified and included in the recommendations to create and establish and further expand a comprehensive website for voter information. So the task force, in their summary, they reported that election officials, I think I can read it too, if that's helpful. Election officials report that voters are frequently frustrated by the inability to easily access election information when ballots contain races on the federal, state, county, and local levels. So I won't go through all of that, but ultimately there's a need to have a centralized online location for voters to access their information. They acknowledge that Clean Elections already has a website that does this with election and voter information. And their proposal is to further expand the Clean Elections website to really make it, and again, reinforce the website as a one-stop shop for all of election information. The task force acknowledged that it's the most efficient pathway forward because we are already doing this work and it's within our mandate. So knowing that we have the success of the traffic to our website and then the acknowledgement of the governor's task force in the Clean Elections website, and then the research that we've done, we'll go to the next slide, please. That takes us to, here's a sneak peek of what our redesign looks like. It's very similar to what we currently have. And again, we worked with our partners on this design, and the goal is to, again, provide that information So it's, easily accessible, quickly, and digestible. And so if you go ahead and click on those buttons, yep, there's just little things here that we could do. This is just a very sneak peek. We can change our messaging. You can see at the top if you hover over voting. So we really spent a lot of time, Alec has worked blood, sweat, and tears on this, where we looked at the pages that we have, the information that we have, our sitemap, and we adjusted it. We restructured it based off of that research that we've done. So we know really a person's going on this place in our site where they expect to find this information instead of where we have it over here. So we used all of that research to restructure the pages of our site to make it more efficient. And then if you scroll down to, please, on the site, the design, again, very simple, but very straightforward. There's, again, some very quick information about the voter dashboard, pulling that information, and then scroll down, and then you can just even click on the little candidate debates. There you go. Just, little pieces of functionality there too. So the big takeaway from this redesign is that it's modular. Our website and our messaging changes depending on the time of year. So if we are in, 2021, August of 2021, we're now focusing on the start of the qualifying period. So we're focused on candidates, right? And voters on how they can support candidates. So the modularity of this system allows us to adjust our messaging and adjust the website depending on what season we're in. When we get into, okay, it's an upcoming election, voter registration deadline, we can again change those top headers, the messaging, and the information that we have down here in these blocks. So is it register to vote? Or is it, sign an equal petition? So we have created this in a way that from a management standpoint, and from a webmaster standpoint, it's very easy to adjust. So again, that helps us keep it relevant and timely and informative for the voter, depending on what they may be looking for during that particular season.
Gina, if I could, I'm not sure I understand this. So if I go on there, I put in my address in Tucson, so it would say you are in this city council district, this board of supervisors district, the school district. And then would it go beyond that and say these are the candidates that are running and information about the candidates and their stands on the issues? How far down does it go?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, excellent question. Currently, our website does that. Yes, you go in, you add in your address, or you use a pin drop, or you enter in your legislative district, your county, or your GPS coordinates. All of that is available to pull this information. Once we know your location, we then identify your districts. And currently, we can identify our federal districts, state, legislative, county board of supervisor, and some cities, depending on the data that we have right now. And then with that, we will pull up, okay, yes, there's an election in your area. Here's what's on the ballot. Is it candidates? Is it, Tucson City Council? Here's the candidates. Here's their biography. Here's their social media links. Yes. Here's their photo. Is it propositions? Here's a link to the publicity pamphlet. Here's all the props on your ballot. Here's, the arguments for and against. We currently do all that. With the governor's proposal, and what we've been working on with the Secretary of State's office is the ability to access additional information so we could drill down further. So we can go all the way down to special fire district. This is, the district that you relied on. This is your precinct number. This is all of that information that's contained in the voter registration database. We don't have that. So the ability to securely access that information allows us to then present more information to voters. So it really reflects what their ballot will be. That way they have that one location to go to and match it up to their ballot and get all of the information we provide, whether it's candidates or ballot measures, it's there and accessible for them. So we do that to some extent. The partnership and the recommendation from the governor's task force will allow us to expand that further.
Okay, thank you.
It's really
Chairman.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Commissioner
add,
Chan?
Chairman.
I'm going to let you continue, but I just have to say, even as somebody who I feel like I understand elections and I'm very aware of when voting is taking place and I participate in every election, I use the voter dashboard every election for myself, just to remind myself of key dates, despite getting mailings from the recorder and elections office. So I personally am a user of the website and can, agree that it's very useful to voters. So I think, the people who don't participate probably can get better use out of it, but I really think anybody can. Anybody who needs a quick question answered. I think I even looked for drop boxes during the last election, and that was on the Clean Elections website, which was fantastic. So thank you and kudos.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Chan, Commissioners, thank you. Yes, and that is often the feedback that we get just from our partners too. I have to really commend Alec for his work, because it takes a lot of work to get this information because of all the different sources. He's got to go to the counties. The counties have to be willing to give it to him timely. And if there's a change, we have to know about that immediately too, to make sure we're constantly providing that accurate information. And he's established such a great rapport with the counties that the counties support our website. The counties are linking to our website, because we have to remember at the individual county level, they may not have the same type of technological resources that we do and the ability to update things. Sometimes they may have to go out of their office to the county IT staff to do these changes. So to have that buy-in and support from our county partners, it really makes this possible. And again, I think Alec has done such a great job in facilitating that relationship with them. We can go to the next slide. Oh, and we plan to launch this in February.
Yeah.
We are working through it on our test sites, proofing, and we're excited to launch it for voters. So the next that we have is our voter education guide. As I mentioned previously, the research that we've done identifies the voter guide as the top source of trusted information for voters. They expect to see it in their mailbox. They know what it is, and they use it. And so we, again, want to continue to make sure it is valuable in meeting the needs of voters. So for 2024, for the first time, we are going to begin not only printing our mandate of the 200-word statement for the candidates, but we are also going to be printing their biographies, which we already collect and we've already been showcasing on the website, but now we're going to have the ability to print it as well too, to further provide that information at voters' fingertips when they get in their mailbox. We are also I'm very excited about this. We're going to include an I voted sticker in the voter guide as well too. We know from historically all of our research, the I voted sticker is social currency. If people love that, it is something tangible that they can get. It's an excitement. It adds more value to the guide. And so we're excited to be able to add an I voted sticker as well. So great things for voters in the voter guide as we head into the primary and general election. We've also created a digital voter guide too for the presidential preference election. So we may not be able to print it and send it out, but we will have digital voter guides too for those other elections as well that are outside of the statewide primary and general election. Because again, we know that people look to it and trust it. Our next slide, please. Our debates. So this is very exciting. So our debates, as we look forward to our primary and general election debates, as the commission may recall, in 2023, we put together a debate work group. This work group was composed of stakeholders in the debate process, whether that was the political parties, media, candidates, campaign managers. We had a great group of folks get together and go through the Clean Elections debate process, and they developed a report for us with recommendations. We are going to continue to do our televised debates. So we have our legislative debates that we do through Zoom, and then we have our statewide debates, which are going to be televised. And for this year, that would be Corporation Commissioner. But as you know, we've expanded that to do U.S. Senate debates in the past, and we want to continue to provide this resource for voters. So we're also going to be doing congressional debates, which we've supported in the past as well too. So we're increasing our televised debates that we will be producing, and we will continue to do our issue research. In December, I believe the commission received a presentation from Noble Predictive Insights on some issue research that we have done. We will do 2 more of those surveys this year. Again, the purpose of that is to identify what voters say are important issues to them so that we can use that data, that information, to shape the discussion of the debates. Because going back to what we know about debates, we know that the sentiment is we don't want to see, again, those attacks, and there's a little bit of a negative sentiment around debates. We want to make sure that it is informative, substantive discussion, and that is directly addressing the issues voters have identified that are important to them. Now, who are we going to be working with this year? That's very exciting because Tom, Paula, and I have been working with the State Procurement Office to look at our options for a vendor to help us execute these debates. We put out a task order and we received responses to that from folks. And we are very excited that we identified our partners on how we're going to be going forward with for 2024. So we will be working with our partner Reister, who we currently work with for our voter education plans. They responded to that solicitation. And they are working in partnership with the Arizona Media Association. So previously we had the Arizona Broadcasters Association and the Arizona Newspapers Association. They combined forces and they are now the Arizona Media Association. And we had a very successful partnership with them in executing our US Senate debates last year, 2022, 2 years ago. And when we did that, we were able to put the US Senate debate out into more households than we have ever done before with our debate process. And that was through a partnership with broadcast stations across the state who we were able to partner with, collaborate with, and get the buy-in to stream this, simulcast this event. And again, we received great feedback on it. The numbers came back really high again of how many households we were able to reach. And so it really set the bar for us on how we can continue to execute our statewide debates. So through this new partnership with Reister and the AMA, we now have the ability to work with our media partners across the state to broadcast our debates for US Senate, Congress, and Corporation Commissioner. So we will be producing them, in-house. And again, having this ability to partner with the AMA will, again, as I mentioned, it's very difficult. Well, it's challenging knowing how many, what the political ad spend will be, the communication and the messaging that's constantly the voters are going to be inundated with. So to have this level of support and partnership and collaboration with the TV stations, the newspaper stations, their online websites, their streaming, radio, to have all of that buy-in on the clean elections debates, it's going to help us be very successful in providing this resource for voters. So we're very excited about that.
I have a comment.
Commissioner Payton?
So I think the bigger this gets, I think the greater participation from these people that are supposed to be debating, because it really aggravates me that some people don't want to debate. I think just the public, like question marks of why don't you want to debate, that kind of thing, would force them to debate, even if they don't want to. But like before, I think when I first was on the commission, we've had debates where nobody would, some of those people wouldn't come. And now I think now that we store those videos and the bigger presentations that we have or more people picking it up, then I think we'll have more participation.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Payton, commissioners, absolutely. When we are communicating with candidates to secure participation, this is absolutely information we share in our invitation with them so they understand the reach, because we know that campaign time is valuable and we know that candidates, need to make their decisions about where they're participating in and what events they attend. And so we make sure that it is very clear that this is an event you will not want to miss because of the reach. You are reaching your constituencies here. There's no better opportunity to do it than the clean elections debates here. So we absolutely make sure that we share that information as we're trying to secure their participation. And we feel it was very helpful when we did that in the US Senate debate. Additionally, so it's not just the televised live event. What we know too from our research, it's also what do we do with that event itself? We record it, but how can we make it also continue to have value for voters? And that's again where we work with our moderators and our media partners. Can we produce smaller clips of it? Can we do a highlight reel? Can we get some of these media partners to do coverage on it and say, okay, these are the key takeaways, and then drive people to the full debate. So we have a lot of opportunity here to work with our journalists across the state to really take this information and make it presentable to voters. And because if they're not able to tune in to the full broadcast, maybe they can get those highlight reels, and then maybe it will drive them to watch the whole debate. Maybe it'll drive them to go to the candidate profile on the dashboard. But it will help us create additional assets to hopefully further increase engagement from voters.
Gina, you mentioned moderators. How are they going to be chosen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great question. So moderators, Clean Elections will still retain approval over our moderators, but this will be done in consultation with our partners. So let's say, for example, we have a congressional debate that's Southern Arizona. We're going to make sure that we have a moderator who maybe is somebody who's on a TV station in that local area, or a local journalist, somebody who has that knowledge of that area that can speak to the issues. So through our partners with the AMA, we will identify potential moderators, and then we'll come to an agreement on, okay, is this the person we're going to go forward with? So it's not going to be a single moderator for all of our televised debates. It will be tailored to the region, tailored to that particular debate. And again, it'll be, and perhaps it's two, perhaps for our US Senate debate, perhaps we decide, okay, we're going to have multiple moderators conduct this. So that's something that we feel that we have more options to select a moderator who really has the skill set for that particular debate, that particular region.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. And I'm sorry, I don't know how I am on time, but next slide's for county partnerships. So our counties are obviously a very important partner for Clean Elections. We're so excited to work with them. As we've been working with them, as I mentioned, we have fantastic relationships with our county election officials. And these are just some examples of how we partner with them. In that middle, the who can vote in the presidential preference election, we created this palm card for Pinal County. We're printing these and sending them to them. So the poll workers on election day on March 19th will have these in their toolkit. So if an independent voter arrives and doesn't understand why can't I vote, the poll worker can give them this information. And we did something similar for them in the 2022 general election as well. The poll workers loved it. And the voters loved it because it gave them something tangible to walk away from, that they felt better. Okay, how can I follow up and confirm my ballot was counted? Or as an independent voter, well, I'm an independent. What happens if I vote a provisional? We explain all of that on this palm card. So it's a great resource for both the poll workers and the voters who are on the ground on election day. On the right, you can see some signage that we worked with Coconino County on that we're really happy about. So if you look at the sandwich board on the left, that was the previous sign that they used for voter ID. It's very heavy text. And then we worked with them to redesign it because we know design is important in elections and for voters. So we created the design on the right, and we're so happy about this because it's receiving great feedback. The county loves it. Other counties have seen this and are now asking for versions of it. So that signage developed by Clean Elections in partnerships with our county will also be in polling places and voting locations throughout Coconino County. Yuma County is interested. We're going to be sharing that with all of our 15 counties too. So things like this where we can step in and help our counties better communicate with voters about what the rules are, opportunities for us. And we do, I don't know if we have audio. Jessica, if we could play that audio clip. To create radio reads for Native American outreach. So this particular ad is for the voter registration deadline for the presidential preference election. That is, we good? Are we? Okay, sounds like we're good. So that will be playing on KTNN, which will reach our Navajo voters that are in Apache, Coconino, and Navajo County, and it's spoken in the Navajo language in Dene. So we will have partnerships like that throughout the year as well too. So it's very exciting. We can do the next screen. And then we'll continue to do our grassroots outreach. A lot of this is under Avery's purview here, but we're very excited to develop toolkits that we could share with all of our partners, whether it's county or whether it's local nonpartisan grassroots organizations or the political parties, whether it's high school students who are looking to get out the vote. We've created toolkits where we provide these assets that they can use to help with voter education. So maybe that's, Zoom background, maybe it's a social media post, content calendars, checklists. We even have things for digital birthday cards. Congratulations, you turned 18. You could post that on somebody's timeline and encourage them to get registered to vote. So we have things like that in our toolkit. We'll also continue to work with our community-based organizations, which is fantastic. We'll continue to make those partnerships and go out to their events and speak on clean elections. We'll table these events, such as attending Celebrate Mesa. So all of these community events that we have the opportunity to attend, we'll do that, make sure we have the boots on the ground. And then our partnerships as well that we will continue, such as with the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, where we will produce election information in American Sign Language. We'll work with the Disability Rights of Arizona. They were formerly the Arizona Center for Disability Law. We'll continue to work with them and support and sponsor conferences such as the African American Conference on Disabilities. So all of the opportunities that we have to go out into the community directly, where they can see our faces, they can see clean elections as a part of their community, that will help us build that trust with them and that recognition, and also to disseminate that election information. We'll continue to do our grassroots outreach. Next slide, please.
I have another comment.
Yes, Commissioner Payton.
So I don't know if I've said this before, but I was thinking, is there some way that we could, and maybe this could be for the future, not this election, involve like Arizona government teachers to maybe help them with their curriculum, or maybe we could have a curriculum that they can help use to teach their classes on this kind of stuff.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Payton, that was an excellent segue into this slide. Thank you for that question. This is perfect timing. Perfect timing, sir. So for our youth, you did, you really did. For our youth voter education, we have created an updated curriculum that our government teachers can use in the classroom that meets state standards, because we know classroom time is precious. We know resources are limited for our teachers. So we have this curriculum that they can download from our website. When we go to tabling events, such as teacher association conferences, we put them on a thumb drive that they can just access. It has all of the information on there for a full curriculum that is about voting, but also how government works. So really fitting into that government curriculum. And again, it meets the state standards. So the teachers know they can use this in the classroom. And we have lesson plans in there. We have assignments for the students. It's really engaging. And so we've been working to push this out to the not our teachers, our homeschool parents, our private schools, our charter schools. So we've been working really hard to push this out. We have just updated it with new laws and new information. And so we're going to continue to look for those opportunities to connect with our educators across the state, which I am happy to say, I think through Avery's work on this, we're seeing an increase in communication with teachers. So they're starting to work with us to come to us to look for this information. And the feedback that we've gotten from teachers on it has been amazing. They're like, this is fantastic. I don't have to develop this myself.
I have a question then. So how are you, are you identifying who teaches Arizona government in each school district?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Payton, yes, we look at the list. We've pulled lists from all of the schools where we identify the principals, and then we get information for who are the government teachers. And so we have done mass emails to them. So we absolutely look at that. And I think one of the important and successful tools that we've utilized to make this connection is to go to those events, to work with the Department of Education, to work with the civics associations and our partners in civic education, to identify these events where we can go to in person and table the events and then explain what this is. We have one-page flyers for it. As I said, we come with thumb drives that we already have the curriculum preloaded, and we just give them a kit. Here you go. And so that has been really successful for us too. We've also ran paid media on it. We've ran ads that say, attention educators, come take a look at this resource for you. So we're continuing to look at how we can let educators know about it so that we can make this a useful tool for them. And, that's also not to say that we will go into classrooms too. We also tell teachers, we're happy to come visit you. We could do mock elections with your students. What's your favorite cookie? Those types of things. We support them. We get a lot of teachers that reach out to us who want voter education guides. They love to use those in the classroom too, to showcase folks. So we will continue to expand our reach to educators across the state.
So what's the participation, do you think, percent wise?
So we first launched the curriculum about 2020, I think, is when we first started to do it. And I would say that when we are at those tabling events, I think, and Avery, feel free to chime in here, I think our table is probably one of the most popular tables that educators come to. We still have a lot of work to do. It's not something that's widely known. So
are those thumb drive? I don't know much about technology. Are they expensive?
No,
I would just say, I taught school for a long time, and you get all kinds of stuff, but every teacher goes to their mailbox every day. And I would just say, send a thumb drive for like maybe 4 teachers to each school, high school, or middle school, whatever the case may be, and send it to them with your brand on it or whatever, and the copy of the curriculum and the thumb drive or whatever, and just send it to them. And I can't imagine a teacher that teaches that would not see that in their box and jump up and down.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Payton, that's a great idea. We could absolutely do that.
Yeah.
We could send them a kit. We could definitely send them a kit. It has the one pager that explains it. There's the thumb drive. Absolutely. So we'll look into that. Thank you.
Okay.
So that takes care of that first one, our updated curriculum. We also have our 26th Amendment project that will, I believe at the last meeting, we shared a video with you. I have another video here too. So it's a series that we created in partnership with ASU and the Cronkite, their media center there. So again, this was focused on educating students about the 26th Amendment, which lowered the voting age from 21 to 18, all in the hopes of trying to encourage that participation and connect with them. We'll continue to have our National Voter Education Day. I wrote National Voter Education Day. I meant National Voter Registration Day. And we'll go out to our college campuses to do voter registration there. We'll continue our partnerships with schools and colleges. Avery has developed great relationships with them across the state. Again, we're happy to travel, whether that's going to NAU, U of A, and our community colleges. We're happy to work with our educators there as well too, and be on the ground. And then I'm very excited to introduce to you Captain Activate. So we'll go to the next slide, please. Captain Activate. And we can just hit one of the animations there. This is how do I describe this? This is the baby, the brainchild of our very talented staff here. So Clean Elections has developed a comic book. So again, as part of our youth voter education outreach, again, going into those classrooms, seeing our students, seeing our 4th graders, our 5th graders, talking to them, hosting those mock elections, how do we connect with them and get them excited about being civically engaged and becoming our future voters? Because we know research has long shown that to create that future voter, we have to have that civic education and start with them early on. We can click on another slide, please, or another click. So here is our comic book, written by our very own Mr. Avery Zola, who is a published comic book author. We could slide, there we go. So we are going to print. We are in print with these. Another one, please. But this is the story of Captain Activate, who is he's the hero. Our villain is Dr. Apathy. And he is coming to... Dr. Apathy. Dr. Apathy is attempting to make the people here apathetic so that he can make all the decisions for their community, and they have no say in it. And so here we have Captain Activate, who comes and recruits our future voters to help them get activated and be civically engaged and to combat Dr. Apathy. So this is a comic book story. Again, the goal here is this will be part of our toolkit for voter education and outreach. We will work with our teachers to have this in classrooms and libraries, even local comic book shops. And this is an opportunity for us to create, those fun little things that help us also connect and be memorable with voters, whether it's a sticker of of Captain Activate and Dr. Apathy, things like that, that we can leave that the teachers can use in the classroom with their students. But we're very excited about this. It's a great story. And so when we have printing done, we'll make sure we have copies, signed copies for all of you. We are also developing, as we know, some of our counties have mascots. We've seen mascots. Clean Elections has had a $5 bill in the past. We are in development of a full-size suit for Captain Activate as well that can go into the classrooms. Who's wearing it, we'll see. But this is a project that we $5 bill. So this is our another thing, just another opportunity that we have that is creative, innovative, and is meeting voters where we are. This is really what it comes back down to. We know we have to meet voters where we are. So what is going to make a fifth grader care about elections and voting? So my children signed off on this. So we can go to the next.
Did Avery draw all that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Avery, do you want to touch on the development and your role in this?
Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. No, I didn't draw it. I'm a terrible artist, but I do like to write. And I came up with it just a brainchild from reading comic books as a child and all the cool PSA comic books that we got, and there were memorable characters and things like that. So I thought that Clean Elections could use something like that to connect with a younger audience.
Very impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, while Avery didn't do the actual drawing, he did absolutely provide feedback that shaped what those images look like. So it is his creation. So I think he's too modest for all the work that he put in on that. Then next we'll jump into our Native American. This is our last slide, our Native American voter outreach. As I shared before, we have audio of how we are going to be running ads in Native language. We are likely going to be sponsoring once again the Navajo Voters Coalition Conference, which will be held this summer. That has been a very successful conference in the past of getting our tribes together and Navajo voters together as well too about upcoming elections, key dates, things that they need to know. It usually has great attendance, so it's a great opportunity for Clean Elections to be there and educate voters. We will continue to translate our voter education materials into Native language. In 2022, we were able to do Navajo, Apache, and Hopi. So we will continue to identify what languages are needed through working with our counties and provide that resource to voters. We will also continue looking at ways that we can partner with the Intertribal Council of Arizona to reach tribal voters across the state. Again, we are potentially even talking about having partnerships with some of our legislative debates that are in tribal communities and how we can work with them. So lots of opportunities here to make sure that we are meeting all the voters across the four corners of the state. Next slide. And so with that, that is our comprehensive plan for 2024. It does not show every detail, but it gives you the high level overview of what we'll be working on. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Very impressive, very innovative, very comprehensive. Any questions or comments from members of the commission?
Yes, I would.
Commissioner Payton?
I would just like to say that in the past 6-7 years I've been here, I mean, we've come light years in all of that. It's really impressive. And that was really what I wanted to do is show, give people information instead of, because we all meet people and they'll find out like we're on this position. They'll say, well, what is that? What does that do? And all that kind of stuff. And the voter education is just mushroomed and it really gives a lot of value to what we do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes,
just offer
Gina.
one thing too. So as we've developed these voter education plans over the years, and I know we have commissioners who have sat here, over the years and for a while, and your feedback, I think each commissioner has a legacy when it comes to voter education. Chairman or Commissioner Payton, your legacy has absolutely been in our debates and in our youth education outreach that has expanded. We did the first U.S. Senate debate at your direction, and Chairman Kimball, absolutely, with independent voters, you've had such a significant impact in how we communicate and educate voters and place a priority on that messaging. And then, of course, with our debate work group. And then Commissioner Chan, I mean, you have been so supportive of our social media outreach and our technology. And so I think that's been your legacy there too, and how we expand the website and our voter dashboard. And Commissioner Titla has long been a champion for voter education and outreach for our Native American voters and our tribes. And so it's been great to see his support there. And then even and our Commissioner Meyer has been wonderful too, with us being on the ground and doing, especially going into the classrooms too. He's been in classrooms with us before with doing voter education and outreach. So I think all of you have left a legacy and an impact in how these plans have developed over the years. So I absolutely appreciate your guidance and insight as we create these voter education plans.
Thank you. Any more comments from the commission?
Chairman,
Is there a motion to approve the voter education plan that Gina has outlined?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the voter education plan as outlined.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Payton. I'll call the roll on the motion to approve the voter education plan. Commissioner Chan,
Aye.
Commissioner Payton,
Aye.
Commissioner Titla.
aye.
Are you there, Commissioner Titla? You should appear to be.
Aye.
Okay, well, if you can chime in to Commissioner Titla, fine. Otherwise, the chair votes aye. And as of now, the voter education plan is approved 3-0. Thank you very
Thank you.
much, Gina. Item 5, discussion possible action on advisory opinion requests. Commissioners, we have 2 advisory opinion requests filed by the Elias Law Group. Request number 1 asks whether several planned actions by a political organization constitute campaign media spending under the Voters' Right to Know Act. In the second, the request asks whether several methods for disclosing original monies satisfy donors' obligations under the Voters' Right to Know Act. It also asks whether donors who do not engage in campaign media spending must provide opt-out notices to their own donors. Tom will provide a summary of the proposed responses, and then we'll take questions and consider a motion on them one at a time. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I wanted to just point out that John Burke from Elias is on the line in the event that he wants to make comment. I just want to make sure we have an eye on him.
Thank you.
So, the purpose of this advisory opinion process, as you all know, is to try to provide as best we can some firmer guidance to folks who have questions about how activities or transactions or what have you will work under the Act. In this particular case, we I will say one thing that's universal across both is we did in drafting these, take the transactions themselves that were laid out in the facts that were provided by the requester, and you'll see there's a question presented by them, and then there's a footnote that the question presented, as we phrased it, is slightly different. The reason we did that is because we wanted to make sure that in answering the question that the requestor and anybody else who reads this understands the framing that we think the Voter Right to Know Act provides, and to make sure that a person who picks this up would understand how we as staff in initially evaluating a situation would sort of march through the issues in the event of some other of anything really, whether it's an advisory opinion or some kind of other situation, right? So we wanted to make sure that when we address these questions, that we're doing it in a way that is transparent about how we would break down that fact pattern under the Act, while from my point of view, keeping the essence or the meaning ultimately of the questions presented. So on request number 1, which is via the Elias Law Group from the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, which is a national political organization. The questions, the letter outlines several projects, actions that the DLCC intends to undertake. Including making monetary contributions to the Arizona Democratic Party, to their just general donations, expending funds to hire consultants to provide research, polling, and data analytics services related to legislative elections to be used for the DLCC's own internal planning, and then to make in-kind contribution of polling, data, and analytics work product to other persons engaged in campaign media spending. So in breaking down those questions, and then as you see, I just want to highlight this question presented issue. The question presented as put together, but as presented in the letter is, does making a monetary contribution to a political party or spending money for projects for internal use constitute campaign media spending by a person if that person is not engaged in other activities set forth in the definition of campaign media spending? If so, please specify which of the two projects, the monetary contributions or the internal projects, constitutes campaign media spending. So our way of approaching that question was first to say, well, if we got this question, but if we had this question in the context of an enforcement, for example, which is all we're trying to avoid here, right? We would break those in two pieces. In other words, we would look at the transactions, at least we think that the Voters' Right to Know Act says you would look at the transactions themselves, because you have to analyze those transactions within the definition of campaign media spending, and then the ultimate thresholds that flow from the spending thresholds that go, that puts you into categories where you may have reporting obligations. So that's how we sort of rephrased, maybe reframed a little, but I think we tried to capture those the way we thought that we think the analysis should go from a commission perspective. So the first question really, as we understood it, was donations to the ADP. Obviously we do not see a donation of money as campaign media spending. The party itself might be subject to the Voter Right to Know Act, but and may have obligations there, but that's not. The next question was this question of internal research, polling, and data analytics for internal use only. So why do those terms matter? Those terms are the terms included in the definition of campaign media spending that it's in section it's in the draft at page 4. Research, design, production, polling, data analytics, social media list acquisition, or any other activity conducted in preparation for or in conjunction with the other activities, including public communications that expressly advocate, and et cetera. So our from our sense of that, or our answer to that question, or the proposed answer that we provided for you commissioners, is that the act does not purport to reach into the internal activities of an organization, and frankly, it's an important question, because we've talked before in our meetings about concerns that we don't that we've heard, but we didn't think were well taken, about whether the Voters' Right to Know Act allows invasion into the internal conduct of an organization. This is especially a concern we've heard from folks affiliated with 501c3s and 501c4s, But nevertheless, this gave us the opportunity to make clear in the draft that it does not purport, the act does not purport to get it to weigh in on internal planning purposes. We note in the draft that because the DLCC, by virtue of its organization and what it represents in the advisory opinion request, is so, without getting too deeply in summary into what it means to be a 527 for tax purposes, the AOR, I think, summarizes this itself, that 527 is a political organization. The purpose of the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee is to effectuate the election of Democrats to legislative seats, right? So it seems the name of the committee and the activities, pretty aligned. So, one thing we wanted to make clear was, where we wanted to say that to a person that you want to police that line a bit, especially when you're in a context where, by virtue of the way your organization or an organization is put together, may mean that, that might be harder, right? That might be more, there might be more, that might be, hard is probably not the right word. It would just be something that a 527, because it's essentially a political organization, it's acting usually for the election of somebody, that you want to, if it's for internal, it's internal, but obviously when your main purpose is actually acting in elections, as opposed to your main purpose is public welfare and therefore advocacy on a particular issue with your additional campaign spending, you might have a different context there. And I think that, or 527s might want to be aware of that, or I shouldn't say might. We believe that it was important to note that. The other thing that, again, is we looked at this, the last question we understood the committee to want to confirm that an in-kind donation to another organization that, and this is the question presented by the committee does making an in-kind contribution of research, polling, data analytics to another person constitute campaign media spending if the recipient of the in-kind contribution engages in campaign media spending? And I think that's a good question, because and we wanted to provide an answer that showed how the statute operated there. The statute, as the AOR notes, does, talks about the covered person. Remember, the covered person is the person filing. Just to go back to sort of the overall structure of the act, has to deal with the acceptance of in-kind contributions. But on the other hand, the definition of campaign media spending sort of says, well, but the spending itself might be. So that's there. And what the statute does, we think, to address that is define in-kind contributions for in-kind contributions that go into campaign media spending as an organization that goes into campaign media spending as traceable money. So what that does is, in campaign finance law, for the last 50 years almost, there has been this dichotomy between what's a contribution and what's an expenditure. Prop 211, because it's not purely within the framework of political committee activity, such as is laid out in our laws and in the Federal Election Campaign Act, doesn't really use those terms per se, but it does resolve that question in a similar way. So the donation of in-kind the in-kind contribution, the donation of in-kind services, could be traceable monies. That's how they resolve this question. This issue of contribution versus expenditure, it's one of these. It's a legacy of this, you just to really go back to Buckley v. Vallejo, and the ability to the government's ability to regulate in that area turns often on whether or not something is a contribution, that is, where I give something of value to another person for them to take some action, versus when I make an expenditure on my own, those are regulated differently. So that's kind of a summary of what we think provides. We think provides an answer that should, in our view as staff, provide elucidate some of these issues for the DLCC, and we hope provides an answer that they can structure their actions around, and so that is what we did. If you all have questions about that, and then obviously, if John has comment, obviously. So
Okay. Are there any discussion on the proposed response number 1? Mr. Birkin, did you have any comments?
I did not. I agree with the draft and Mr. Collins' remarks just now.
Okay, I had a little trouble hearing you. I heard I did not, and that was
Yeah, I did not. I agree with the draft and with Mr. Collins' remarks that he just made just now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're working on the sound right now. Oh, hey.
Okay, you do not have any questions, and you agree with Mr. Collins' analysis.
Exactly.
Thank you. Any comments from members of the commission on this proposed response?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Chan?
I just want to say that I think I'm really happy to hear from Mr. Burkhan. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And because that was my main concern when I read the draft advisory opinion, I think it's well crafted. And frankly, it's a challenge to implement an entirely new law, and particularly one that, has traceable monies. It makes it a little more complex than perhaps what traditional campaign finance law contemplated or contemplates. And so I'm really gratified to hear that Mr. Burkhan doesn't take issue with the draft advisory opinion, because that was my main concern was, reading something and thinking it makes sense to you as a commissioner is one thing, but I have appreciated in the rulemaking process, and will appreciate in this process, hearing from the folks that are representing members of the regulated community. So thank you, Mr. Burkhan, for being here today and giving us your thoughts on that.
Thank you very much for having me.
Any other discussion on proposed response number 1? If not, do I have a motion to approve advisory opinion 24-01?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Chan?
I move that we approve advisory opinion 2024-01.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve advisory opinion 24-01. I will call the roll. Commissioner Chan?
Aye.
Commissioner Payton?
Aye.
Commissioner Titla?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Titla. Chair votes aye. The advisory opinion 24-01 is approved 4-0. Now we turn to request number 2. Any discussion? Tom?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners. So the second question is from through the Elias Law Group, the Democratic, the DLCC again, and the PAC for America's Future. And their question had to do with the application of accounting methods to a particular donor's response to requests for information from covered persons. And what they, as a background matter, what the request lays out is essentially how, these two organizations, have a certain amount, have a certain amount of money, and they have that money, in a variety of different counts, because any organization that's operating at a sort of a federal level is going to be dealing with a variety of different state law issues in terms of contributors that are allowed in some states and not allowed in other states, monies that can be used for some purposes in some states and not used in other states. So in order to facilitate that internally, they've organized their finances in a manner to ensure they're compliant across jurisdictions. What that means in Arizona is that, however, is, you know, when we're drawing down this original money's information, you know, and you're running an organization and you're asked for, so the transaction, again, remember, the covered person is going to ask the donor, you know, for a set of information. How much, you know, where'd you get the money, and how, and basically, where'd you get the money? And where do they get the money? Is basically the big question. So, so they laid out 3 different methods, upshot of which are, you know, one of them is a sort of a first in, last out methodology. One is to say, you know, with one without that, and then essentially, you know, basically how to walk through how that disclosure would happen. The AR notes, and our opinion acknowledges that as staff, we've taken the position we didn't need to have a specific rule on accounting. In other words, the statute talks about record keeping and authorizes us expressly to make rules about records. In the rulemaking process, you know, our recommendation was not to get into accounting as such, because we are of the view that, I mean, not to sound overly cautious about regulation, but we didn't want things to turn into the thing we would not want in enforcement, if it was avoidable, although it may be unavoidable anyways, is a battle of experts on accounting about whether or not an accounting method was reasonable and appropriately applied, if the record keeping was sufficient for anybody who looked at the transactions to understand there was an effort, a good faith effort here to make the disclosures required by law. So that said, you know, we tried to, in addressing these questions, we said, you know, on their face, there's nothing obviously that stands out in these methods as problematic under the Act. And we outlined there, and one of the things we relied on, was testimony we received here at the commission from the Campaign Legal Center Action Fund about how, in their view, the donor who's receiving that 16972D request, you know, will have some flexibility in determining, you know, how to best distribute, allocate, if you will, who donated what money, right? So the issue, essentially the issue is, you know, at the end of the day, notwithstanding one's accounts and how one's setting up accounts, the money's fungible. So you're essentially tagging who is responsible for that donation out of a set of, if you have $100,000 and you have to tag, and this is literally the example that is in the draft, and that, the CLC Action Fund talked about, David Kolker talked about, is got $100,000, you're distributing, the donor will get the first opportunity to sort of identify, who the correct source of fund, who they think the right source of funds there. So it provides a modicum of flexibility there. The idea being, and the reason why we thought it's important to mention that testimony is because even though, folks who were involved in drafting the Act may not have an evidentiary role in describing, in determining what the purpose of the Act is, or in talking about what their intentions were. In this case, it really provides a good gloss on why the statute itself doesn't really drill down on that, right? The statute sort of leaves this there. Now, understanding that the root of the question is, well, we want to make sure that our accounting system works. We tried to reframe that in terms of records, and then what we did, which we hope is helpful, and the reason why we thought, was to say, okay, well, if you were asked, well, what's going to make something reasonable as a record keeping matter? Essentially, what we tried to stress was that, there are some indicia of reasonableness that are pretty commonsensical for anybody who's running any business, right? You ought to have your books kept. You ought to, If you have financial policies, you ought to have financial policies on how folks get signed off on. You ought not sort of switch accounting methods based on the person asking. And then you ought not result in, and the AOR, I think, quite helpfully acknowledges you ought not result in, double counting somewhere or somewhere else, or ending up with somebody who, is sort of, if the theory of this works, and I think Kolker's comment outlines this, the theory of this works, and you had $100,000 that was all going to get distributed, eventually all people's donations would get disclosed in one way or another. So that's in that may not happen, in the sense that someone may not eventually distribute all that money, but we want to see something that's reasonable. That's what the rule we passed asked for, and that reasonableness is to be determined in part by is it objectively reasonable? What can you point at in response to a question, if you got it, as a spender or a donor, to say, here's what I did. I did this, and this, and these are the ways, and this is how it works, and so that's what we try to do there. So in that sense, so basically what the bottom line of the draft AO is to say, yes, these methods are fine, and in implementing, we would recommend that you again take some attention to the kind of attention to compliance that you probably, I think that most folks are undertaking anyways, because you have to, at the end of the day, you have other compliance obligations that are already putting that obligation on you, whether it's the Internal Revenue Service, your own fiduciary duties as a manager of a fund, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we did there, and I think that's probably enough of a summary. I think we slightly rephrased those questions as well, but I'm not sure that we did it. I'm not sure it was quite as maybe dramatic looking as the other one might have looked to some folks. The other question obviously was, must donors who are not covered persons, provide notice of their own donors to their own donors under the Act. So you recall there's this opt-out opportunity, and the statute says covered persons must provide an opt-out opportunity to their donors. So the context here essentially is, if you have a donor who has sub-donors, is it on the donor to provide that opt-out notice? And the statute does not, in our view, put an onus on the donor to provide an opt-out notice to their own donors. I mean, obviously, and I don't think we say this in the AOR, this is, and so I risk editorializing here, relationships, I mean, because we don't need to tell folks this. Obviously, organizations' relationships with their own donors are their relationships. So that's, that there are reasons why a person will want to have conversations with their donors about the potential for disclosure, even if that, donor itself is not the person who may provide the notice directly, but they could, and the rules contemplate that they could as well. So anyways, so I think that's about as much of a summary as I probably should offer there, unless there are further questions.
Okay, is there any questions or discussion on proposed response number 2? Mr. Birkin, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think just on the second, that was very helpful, Mr. Collins. On the second piece of it, as I understand the answer there, covered person sends notice to our client's donor entity. That donor entity has the option, obviously, of trying to get consent from their own underlying donors, but is not required to. But obviously, our client would have to consent to the use of the client funds for the covered person to utilize those funds. But it's really only the consent between the covered person and the immediate donor that is required, and satisfies the the opt-in or the 21-day opt-out requirement.
Mr. Collins, do you want to respond to that?
I'm not sure we've gone that far in this answer. I think that, in other words, in what you said, there's the donor question, which is what's the donor's obligation, which is what we focused on. We did not discuss the totality of what the covered persons, and I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying we did not, in this opinion, seek to address the covered person's obligation.
Right. Okay. Just the donor's obligation.
Yeah.
That was a better way of reframing, Mike.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Birkin. Any other comments on proposed response number 2? If not, do I have a motion to approve advisory opinion 24-02?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve advisory opinion 24-02.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve advisory opinion 24-02. I will call the roll. Commissioner Chan,
Aye.
Commissioner Payton,
Aye.
Commissioner Tidla.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Tidla. Chair votes aye. The proposed response, the proposed advisory opinion 24-02 is approved 4-0. Thank you for your attendance, Mr. Birkin. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me.
Item 6, public comment. This is the time for consideration of comments and suggestions from the public. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date or responding to criticism. Please limit your comment to no more than 2 minutes. Does any member of the public wish to make comments at this time? Anyone on Zoom? There's no one here in the audience. Anyone on Zoom want to make comment? It doesn't appear like there's anyone there. Okay, thank you. The public may also send comments to the commission by email at ccec@azcleanelections.gov. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. I will call the roll. Commissioner Chan,
Aye.
Commissioner Payton,
Aye.
Commissioner Tidla.
No.
Commissioner,
Aye.
thank you, Commissioner Tidla. Chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.